Peace and blessings to all who are in the listening audience. As most of you already know, I'm Camille Shabazz of the Macadine International, Macadine Enterprises, Shabazz Enterprises. And the title of this brief talk is The Nation of Islam, Drug Wars, and Sexual Perversion. And you might ask yourself, how can I possibly speak on these three little tied in subjects, which all tie in together quite well? And I'm not coming from a script. I'm coming from my memory bank. And I'm sure that ayahuasca that I took approximately 10 months ago definitely has something to do with this surge of download and upload that I've been receiving as of the last few days and inspired to talk about. Because as the saying goes, we're in a time that everything is being laid bare. If you are hiding something as small as an atom inside of a rock, it is being revealed today. So it's better to look at the man in the mirror, be true to yourself, and start scrubbing your nasty trifling behind. So, the Nation of Islam, drug wars, and sexual promiscuity. I taught the Nation of Islam teachings for 35 years. So if anybody can authoritatively talk about the Nation of Islam, it would be me. For the most part, since my first 6 months in the Nation of Islam, I was a minister. And I was a minister all the way up until 2015, when I had the unfortunate event of going to prison. But when I was in prison, and when I did the 6 years, I went to 6 different prisons during that time. And I was a leader at every institution over the Nation of Islam believers. And I shook every institution that I was in because I was a true believer in the mythology of the Nation of Islam. Because all the Nation of Islam is an extension and a crafting off of the old Islam of the East. Just a mix that got a new leader and a new head and a new philosophy, but it all ties in together. But back to the subject of drug wars. Back in 1988, crack was new in Plainfield, New Jersey, where I'm from. And there was a lot going on in the religious, political aspect of the Nation of Islam at that time. I'm not going to say direct names, but I'm going to change the names so I won't get any lawsuits against me. But the main minister of Plainfield, New Jersey, who I'll refer to as KA, was also the East Coast representative of the Nation of Islam. Very powerful brother, very influential brother. And he was so influential that he was considered to be next in line if Farrakhan was to step down or depart. But because of his sexual perversion, that was the thing that actually destroyed his ministry. Because, and whoever is listening to what I'm saying, there's a lot of people who are alive who were in the Nation of Islam between the years 1978 on up, when Farrakhan first started his personal mission, which he said was an extension of Elijah Muhammad's teachings, which is another subject, because he, along with Bernard Kashmir, now known as Jabril Muhammad, crafted this new Islamic formula for his leadership. So that, like I said, that's a whole nother subject. But back to what I was talking about in regards to the sexual perversion that existed under this individual's leadership. And when I stood up in 1980, I was only 15 years old. So I didn't officially stand up and dedicate my life to the Nation of Islam until 1985, when I went to see Farrakhan at Madison Square Garden in September of that year. And it was such an electrifying experience that I said, you know what, I'm ready. I had already been studying it between that time, quite ardently, listening to his lectures every Sunday that came on the radio for about just a half an hour. And I had the accumulation of like 4 years of notes that I had accumulated, and I was always studying. So when I went into the nation, I was already ready for the ministry. I knew more than those that were already in place. So I was a fanatical, dedicated soldier. But tying into what I was saying in the projects and sexual promiscuity, when I went into the mosque, it was nothing but an extension of the sexual promiscuity that I thought I was going into a place to be reformed of. But unfortunately, under this man's leadership, and I'm telling you, this right here, what was going on with that brother, had it been going on today, he probably would be in jail. Because it was no holds barred. No woman who was of any quality, of any good looking nature, who came in that mosque was safe from that man. No woman. No woman. And there are babies around in Plainfield that are now grown that are testimonies to what I'm saying. So this man was a very, very perverted, boundless sexual predatory nature. So when I went into those ranks under him, who at that time he was in between. He was sat down, and one of his cronies was put in place named Brother Barry. So I was Brother Barry's assistant minister, and Brother Barry was only 4 years older than me. So we had a bond. And it's a long story dealing with that, because the way me and this brother met before the Nation of Islam is crazy as hell. But anyway, he was K.A.'s crony. And even though K.A., who lived on the same street of the mosque, about 4 blocks down the street, and right down the street from the projects, he was only a block and a half away from the projects, and actually came from the projects himself. So after the mosque meetings, his crony Barry, along with myself and another brother who I would call Clark, who was the captain, we would go there after the mosque, and actually the local payments that should have went to Gary, I done messed up. Now y'all know who it is. Ashley was given to Brother K.A. So I'm just trying to protect those who probably don't want to be a part of this personal testimony. But nevertheless, at that time, crack was really, really big in Plainfield. And mind you, Plainfield is a small little 3 mile by 3 mile town. but it was mainly black. Probably at that time, maybe 90% black, and it was referred to as Baby Harlem. As a little boy, I remember seeing the pictures of Joanne Chesimard on the street poles, aka Asada Shakur, who had recently broke out of a New Jersey prison. The Black Liberation Army broke her out of a maximum security prison. So that type of spirit was the spirit of Plainfield, New Jersey in the 60s and 70s. And actually, the 1969 riots that we had in Plainfield, New Jersey, that was an extension of Newark, New Jersey's riot, resulted in the first white police officer being murdered. And he was murdered at the projects that I grew up in, right on the corner of Plainfield Avenue and West 2nd Street. And I lived at 532 and 536 West 2nd Street. And it was my brother, my friend Michael Long's father, who got convicted of the murder. They beat that police officer so bad that when they got him on the ground, somebody took one of the old school shopping carts that were a lot more heavier than what they are today. And they picked it up and they took the man's whole face off with that carriage. So that was the spirit of Plainfield. And I had the fortunate blessing, because I was telling you how there was actually 5 families in the projects who had that parent families out of the 150 units. And one of these 2-parent households was one of a brother by the name of Brother James X. I was friends with Brother James X's son, Cassim, rest in peace. Now the brother named Brother James X Robinson, his son Cassim and James Jr. were both members of the Nation of Islam. They were little boys my age. Cassim actually was my first friend when we moved in the projects in 1969. And the other family that had a 2-parent household was the other Nation of Islam family. I forget their last name, but the boy that I played with, his name was Jamil. So me, Cassim, and Jamil were buddies as 5 and 6 and 7-year-olds. Those were my first friends. But I didn't find out till later, because Cassim and them used to go to school on a blue Volkswagen bus, 6 a.m. in the morning, before, as I was just getting up to go to elementary school. They're already suited and booted and on their way to North, to Muhammad's University, which I found out later as well. But back to what I was talking about Brother James, Cassim's father. Coming to find out, he was the first Muslim follower of Elijah Muhammad in Plainfield, New Jersey, and he was the one who brought in AK into the Nation of Islam himself back in the 50s. So, fast forward to the drug wars. Aside with the sexual perversion. And to add to that situation, prior to me going into the mosque in 1985, there was a civil war in the mosque between KA and another dude who was a barber by the name of K. Muhammad. Now, as I look back, because K. Muhammad was accused of impregnating his 16-year-old babysitter, who he was screwing, so to speak. And I don't know what the beef was between him and KA, but it resulted in the mosque actually being physically attacked and a war taking place between these two factions physically during a meeting with women and children in the mosque. This is how crazy religion is, in addition to the perversion. So the focus of AK's ministry was the conquest of as much vagina as we possibly could conquer. And the justification of, this mentality, because like I said, I was in the inner circle. I was under this man's leadership at this man's table. And I say all this respectfully. All of this is being said respectfully. But I heard all the inside information about the sexual perversion. About the sexual perversion, I heard about it. I heard all the stories of how, Elijah Muhammad with Bernard Kashmir's, aka Jibril Muhammad's, either daughter or wife. You know what I'm saying? It was the same concept of the leader being able to have access to any woman that he desired. So that really reigned supreme. That was part of the mentality. And I remember it being said to me that a soldier's dick should always stay hard. So me going into that environment and allowing that shaping to take place, in addition to the promiscuity I was brought into, that only made things worse. And anybody that was in that man's ministry, and that whole East Coast was under his leadership, perversion reigned supreme. I think Philadelphia all the way up to New York was his. He was the East Coast representative. And Conrad Muhammad out of Philadelphia came up from under him. Dennis Muhammad came up from under him. Eric Muhammad came up from under him. All these dudes, I'm gonna leave it at that. I remember when I first met Conrad Muhammad in Philadelphia in 1986. Me and my brother Salam looked at him from a distance. He looked like Flex Alexander when he played Michael Jackson. He was even posed, leaning on a chair, like Michael Jackson, if you get my drift. So, pedophilia, rampant sexual fulfillment, a spirit of militancy that was like a gang prevailed when I was in that in particular mosque. So when it came to the drug dealers, this drug war, see, AK and a lot of old school NOI followers taught the message of Reverend Ike about no pie in the sky. I want my money before I die, here and now. And that was the basis of AK's message. So we was on this money, good homes, and friendship in all walks of life mission, and acquiring all the wives and all the sexual pleasures that we could possibly get. So there was big ballers out there. One name was Huckles. He was the boss man. He was the boss dude. So there was an envy when we would see all these dudes while we was out there selling the final call and doing what we did, which was basically trying to knock all the pretty women that we possibly can get and bring them to the mosque and get their phone numbers and hook up with them. I'm just keeping it 100. I'm telling you right now, it was on and cracking. Nothing but a sex fest. in these mosques. I remember we walked in the mosque one day, and a brother was in there screwing his girl right in the mosque. And, you know, but the mosque wasn't open at the time. It was closed hours, and he was staying there, but he knew that was wrong. So things just happen. I guess it's nature. But back to what I was talking about. There was an envy. It was an envy of the drug dealers. So when we first started getting at them and planning and plotting on taking them down, it wasn't for the sake of ridding the community of drugs. Not at all. It was all about us taking their money and their wealth. We had actually turned into a damn gang. Point blank. So anyway, and you know, fortunately, you know, we lived according to the law of the streets. Police weren't called, but a lot of lives were put in danger because this stuff took place once again in the heart of the city, in the projects where I grew up at, which was really the center of the whole playing field. These projects where you can get anything in the world, from dope or whatever. So came up with a plan, and we actually went and we handled the business, and it wasn't with masks. We didn't kick any doors in. We knocked in and was let in and sat the individuals down, and we took everything they had, safes, whatever, and we kept all the money. And we broke off AK his portion. See? So the irony to that whole situation is, because we did it another time, and this had drew so much heat, and this really sent waves through the whole NOI, because this is where the dope busters originated from. We originated that in Plainfield, New Jersey, and then it spread out down there with Sharif and them, who like rode the wave of what we was doing. Because Alpha Farrakhan, who was married to the daughter of Louis Farrakhan and had a son by his daughter named Anwar, he also was a police officer who AK did not trust, but he still was the captain for some reason. Interesting. So when we started hitting these dope dealers, they started getting ready to go to war with us. And I remember on one occasion, me, Barry, and Clark went to the movies one night. Multiplex Cinema in Sayreville. Real popular. All the black people went and saw the movies there. And one night, I think we went to see some Eddie Murphy movie. And the dudes that we hit, Huckles and all his crew, was up there. And they were in there talking loud. And we had no weapons. My heart was in my throat. But I had the spirit of fanaticism and war in me. And I knew that Clark and Barry, they were soldiers. So, you know, I knew it was going to be all good. But anyway, after the movie was over, they beat us to the exit area. But they was in the middle where everybody had to go through. And man, I don't know how we looked to them. But he must have looked like the Incredible Hulk and Rockman and some other big hero or something, because when we walked through there, they did not mess with us. And I looked at them, we all looked at each other, and we kept on walking through, and they didn't do anything. But that wasn't the end of it. Because for about a week later, after the mosque, it's evening time. So we had this thing where we would caravan and make sure brother Barry made it in home safely, and then we would all just go our separate ways. So it was only, I think we had just 3 cars. So this night going home, Brother Gary was in the front. That's his name, Brother Gary. He was in the front of the caravan. For some reason, he wants to go through the projects this night. And not only did he want to go through the projects, the brother pulls over, and we all had to get out with him. It's me, Brother Clark, Brother AK's son, Brother Kane, Brother Earl, and I believe Brother Keith. It was only like 5 of us. He gets out the car, so we had to all pull over. I left my car on. I had a big ass 1972 sedan DeVille. It was clean. But anyway, he gets out. He's talking to these brothers. It's nighttime, and I'm telling you, it's at least 12 of them. At least 12 of them. Now, many years ago, the projects they're divided between the new and the old, but they're both the center of the city. I was from the so-called new projects. The old projects was across the tracks. We were divided by some tracks like 12 feet high with big cold rocks that we would climb over, damn near get hit by trains and shit. But we was always rivals against each other to begin with. Brother Gary didn't grow up in that setting. I did. So many years ago, I was going back and forth with those dudes anyway. And it was one dude there named Cody. And when I see Cody, even though we're much older, I'm gonna slap the shit out of you, brother. I owe you one. I really do. Because you got me twice. But anyway, years ago, we was at a block party. And me and my brother Burl, we were in an argument with these 2 brothers, Kenny Waters and another brother that was from the old projects. So this dude, Cody, who didn't have nothing to do with it, but he was a little hyena. He was a sideline little punk. But anyway, we talking. He has nothing to do with it. We like 10, 11 years old. Out the blue, this is at a block party too. There's a whole lot of people there. We in the grass of a baseball diamond. So we talking, and out the blue, Cody hit me and run through the crowd. And I try to run and catch him, and he gets away. We 11 years old. Okay, fast forward. I'm 24. To the night when we pull over. Among them 12 dudes that was out there that night, Cody was in the midst of them. And like I'm saying, you cannot make this shit up, man. Cody was one of the dudes. We all grown now. Pete Thorne, I think he was out there, rest in peace, on the other side, on the enemy side. Well, anyway, Brother Gary's talking to them. And it's starting to get heated. Why out the blue? The same dude that hit me in the jaw when we was kids, hit me in the jaw and ran again the same way. 12, 13 years later. And that kicked off a war right there in the middle of the projects with 5 of us and 12 of them. It was, we in suits. We're fighting back to back. We fighting back to back. 4 of us back to back. Hitting them, knocking them down. The women was out there screaming, oh, them Muslims are throwing the fuck down. They couldn't fuck with us. We was just in the zone. But we got divided because they started reinforcing and coming back with sticks and shit. And I looked down and I saw Brother Clark by himself. And I never forget, he had a tan beautiful maxi leather cowhide jacket. And I remember seeing the light on him from the streets. And I saw a big ass, it wasn't a bamboo stick, it was a carved stick from a damn branch that somebody had made a staff out of. And all I could see was the stick go up, and I saw my brother do like this, and I heard it crack his arm, and I saw other people coming at him, and I saw his head was bleeding. So I ran to my car that I said I left on, and I put it in drive, and I fucking hit the pedal. Fortunately for all of us, the pedal went off the damn metal piece. Because had it not done that, because when I did get it on there straight and I hit it, a man's brother's ass was in the headlights, and he was on his all fours, scurrying, falling out of the way. Because I had to go and get my brother from that situation. But we got out of that, and we had to get out there, man. And that started, we had to flee, and that started a war. That started a war. But the root of all of that was greed, envy, and sexual perversion. And it's a lot more I can go into. You know, it's a lot more, but it led to us becoming just like the individuals that we claim to have been going to war against. Because it didn't stop there. It didn't stop with us going to war with individuals for taking their shit, mind you. We went a step further and hooked up with drug dealers and got some weight from drug dealers. Yeah, this is my testimony. We got weight from them. And we started doing the same thing in the name of Allah, in the name of money, luxury, money, good homes, and friendship in all walks of life. And then to add insult to injury, all of us got mauled the hell down by the very thing, that the very poison that we was distributing. All of us. I'm out there selling it, then I started smoking woolies. Before you knew it, I had a habit. That's the universe. Had nothing to do with religion. Had nothing to do with religion at all. It is the law of cause and effect. The law of karma. So, all of that, I'm saying all of that to say, because what I was saying in regards to that sexual perversion, going all the way from Philadelphia all the way to New York, we got to understand the dynamics of this sexual perversion. And you know, that dude named Polite in New York that is now being accused, charged with lewd and rape, I guess, of a 14-year-old. Listen, man, pedophilia is technically legal in New York. New York's laws on pedophilia is so weak. Fortunately, he wasn't in New York, so the girl could get some justice in Florida. But in New York, if you go and look at the Catholic churches that are in New York, I looked it up earlier today. There's about 1,000 Catholic churches in New York alone. New York is the capital of pedophilia and sexual perversion. No doubt about it. I'm from New Jersey, which is only 20 minutes outside of New York, Plainfield, New Jersey, where I was from. Right straight down Route 22, and you're in New York. But we was technically squared compared to New York. We went to New York to get our wholesale drugs and to really just people watch. Go to 42nd Street that was lit up with all kinds of prostitutes, movies, everything. You would go out there and you'd be like just so wide-eyed. I remember going to a peep show and spending my last $5. I was 17 years old. And the little wooden thing, you go in the room, in the little booth, and the wooden thing slid up, and all the girls in there naked. And one would come up to the door and let you feel their titties or whatever. And it was so mind-blowing, you know? That is, when they say the Big Apple, they're talking about that apple that Adam and Eve bit off of. Because good and evil is at the epitome in New York. It's at the very epitome. All the good in the world is in New York. And all the evil in the world is in New York. So most people who are raised in New York, and a lot of people raised in New Jersey, but New York especially doesn't stand a fighting chance for the most part when it comes to sexual perversion and being perverted sexually. It's in the very fabric of New York. Do the history on New York. Prostitution and homosexuality and pedophilia has been a part of the very cloth of New York since the beginning. And that's why if anybody who is has been raped or molested as a child, if they don't report it by 23 years old, they can't report it. They can't report it. So it's a lot of different laws that they have, and that's coming on the books, that pedophilia is not a crime, and other things they're all coming together to try to make this legal. So, and if you do the history of New Jersey is the incest state. It's the incest state. This is where people came from the Carolinas and came from different areas like Philadelphia, and if they wanted to have relations with their daughters or sons, they would flee to New Jersey, because New Jersey was the incest, and it still is. And if they're up to 16 years old, it's legal for a father to deal with his consenting daughter. That's New Jersey. And I remember being in elementary school, and I was in the 4th grade with this sister named, I'm gonna say Tina Graham. And I remember looking at her and her brothers, and they looked strange. They had sort of cyclone heads, and their eyes was close together. They had the look of the way a lot of Jewish people look. It was really, really different. But anyway, there was families, many families, but the Graham family in particular, which my mother later told me, they came from the Carolinas, and they were known for incest. And they were known for incest. It came out in the National Enquirer about Stedman's Graham's people coming from down there to up to New Jersey. And they were connected. And Graham's mother, Stedman's grandmother, was the product of incest. And come to find out, those funny looking individuals I went to school with were the niece and nephew of Stedman. his relatives. And as I grew up and I started to see and hear, even in my own family, all these different families in Plainfield, New Jersey, in particular where I grew up in, were victims or had incest going on. So there's a lot to be considered. And I used to wonder why sexual infidelity was really a smacked on the wrist in the mosque. But now I understand why. I understand why. I understand why. But I also understand why Farrakhan absolutely had to get rid of AK. It was politically expedient. Because when someone doesn't have discipline, as I call discipline, he's a danger to himself. He's a danger to himself. And that dude populated what they would call, we don't call it that, but many bastard children that were not taken care of, that was mistreated. Him and his son Cain. So we're in a day and age where everything is being unfolded. But back to what I was saying, we ended up getting struck down living against our personal principles. Moral to the story, look yourself in the mirror, and whatever issues you have as an individual that you know aren't right and that you know needs to be dealt with, whether by therapy or by personal effort, handle it. Be true to yourself. This is the longest time I ever spoke, but I just had to get this out. Peace.